All right. Hi, all. Thank you again for joining us today for NCI's Life program. Our program is made possible by the generous donations of Barbara Matthews. She's a wonderful example of the pursuit of learning and wisdom. Some housekeeping items: we will have all of our guests on mute for both audio and visual. This will help to ensure that the presentation has a nice flow to it and there's not a noise background going on during the presentation. We will hold the questions till the end, but feel free to use the chat feature to send those in, and I will read those to the panelists at the end of the presentation. And again, if you have any questions after the presentation has concluded, feel free to send those to me, and I will get those to this awesome panelist so they can get their expert advice back to you. Again, today's live presentation is entitled Life Care Planning with the members of the State and Elder Law Center of Southside Virginia, and I'll let them introduce themselves. And without any further delay, I turn it over to our wonderful panelists.
All right, I think I'm starting this extravaganza. I'm Robert Haley of the Estate and Elder Law Center. With us today is my wife, Cricket Haley, who's also the firm administrator and elder care coordinator, and also Joanna Smart, who's also a life care coordinator here in the office. Go to the next slide, Mal. Okay, what we are going to talk today is life care planning. It's something that we added as part of our law practice a few years ago, and we've actually enhanced it and kind of made some changes on it as we've gone along, and Cricket will get more into that. But there's an area where somebody may not be sick enough or incapacitated enough where nursing home is really called for, or they don't want to go to the nursing home and they're looking for options to try to stay out of the nursing home. And that's where life care planning comes in, where we're trying to come up with a plan to allow the person to maintain the most level of independence that they can as their health or mental capacity starts to decline. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Go ahead, Mal. All right, so our main presenter today is going to be my wife, Cricket. Has a BA in studio art from High Point University. She's been our law firm administrator now for, what, at least 5 years, more than that.
Are you kidding? Try 10.
Time flies. It's been so much
You
fun.
love me so much.
She's had all kinds of training. She's trained in senior yoga, death doula training, which she will talk to you about that later on some of the things that we offer for end of life, Reiki practitioner, the owner and manager of Covenant Care Management, and she'll talk more about that later. And again, she is a certified elder care coordinator, taking that program through Stockton University. And with that said, I'll turn everything over to Cricket for right now. Go ahead.
So the rest of our staff joining us is Joanna Smart, and Stephanie Wagner is our registered nurse who helps us with this. Joanna Smart is a licensed practical nurse. She also has her CNA license, and she will be joining us along the way. And specifically at the end when you guys have questions. And I'm going to try not to look at the screen because the screen is up high and the camera is down here. So if you catch me looking at the screen, it's because I'm looking at the slide. We also have Grace Young, who is our legal assistant. She also helps very often in life care planning with financial management issues. And then, of course, I'm the kind of management person behind everything else. So our agenda is going to be, go to the next one, is going to be what is life care planning specifically. We're going to go over what that is, and then also do a case study. We'll talk about some stories of actual clients, of course removing the names, and then get you familiar with what the elder care continuum is, which is graphic basically that has been devised to help people understand where they are along the way, from basically retirement and full health to death. And then who can benefit from, we'll go over the roles of life care planning, all the people who are involved to make this work, and then also who can benefit from the life care planning at the end. So what is life care planning? It is a service that helps people find and pay for good care for life, and is a new specialization in regard to elder law specifically. Life care planning is something that is popping up throughout the nation. It's very specialized because it's extremely intensive, and it's mostly through elder law attorneys. And very often there are care management companies that are either working with the attorney's office or they are part of the attorney's office, which is our situation. And so this is basically to help a client or a family find care at whatever level of financial stability they have. So whether you have a high level of assets or if you have a little bit of assets, then somewhere along that continuum, we can help either find public benefits or paid for benefits to help you along your way in moving through the latter part of your life. What is life care planning? It is actually where we bridge all of the parts of, like I said before, of where you are fully functioning and you are basically retired, you're home, your health is good, your finances are fine right then. There's nothing like really intense going on. It's just you're getting on in years. So maybe you're 50 or 60 or 70 years old and you're, you know, thinking about what do I need to do to plan for the latter part of my life. This movement is also very death positive in that we all have to realize that we are passing through this life and that death is an inevitability, and to embrace the fact that you can choose to make plans for your latter years as opposed to just continuing as if you're 20 years old. That can't happen. None of us ever get to do that. And if we're lucky, you know, we get to actually spend some time in retirement. We need to plan, do our estate planning, which is usually getting the documents and things like that in place, like your will, your power of attorney, all those things. What happens if you haven't done that? Maybe you have to, somebody's going to end up having to have a guardianship or a conservator if you didn't get your documents in place. And then we also do management of medical care, home care, house management, maintenance, financial management and maintenance, pet management and maintenance. All those things kind of are on each end of between where you retire and before you die. So we are the experts in that whole life continuum. And then also into death, we even go into making sure that you have addressed, you know, how you want your estate to actually pass. Have you prepared your will? Have you done a funeral? You know, all those kinds of things. So it's super intensive, like I said. So we're going to start with a little case study. This case study is for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They're both 85 years old. They have 3 children who reside outside of the state. Mr. Smith has had a pacemaker put in 3 years ago. He has high blood pressure. Mrs. Smith recently suffered a stroke. She was discharged from the hospital to a nursing home for rehab. So usually, unfortunately, we very often, this is when we get the phone call. This is when somebody calls our offices and they are now in a state of panic because not only have they not prepared, but all of a sudden they're facing the inevitable death of, or illness or incapacitation, mentally or physically, of one of the members of the couple. And this could be anybody in the family. It could be a child. It could be anybody, you know, if they suffer a severe car accident or don't have family to take care of them or whatever. This situation can apply across the board to many people from many types of life. This is just kind of a generic sort of thing. So this is usually when we get the phone call where people are wanting to decide or meet with Mr. Haley, the attorney, about what do they need to do in regard to preparing for nursing home. Is there anything they can do to help save their assets? And in this case, Mr. and Mrs. Smith own a home with a mortgage. So they don't own their home outright just yet. They still have a mortgage on it. They have liquid assets, bank and brokerage accounts of $150,000, which are titled jointly. Mr. Smith grosses an income of $1,200 and Mrs. Smith has $3,000. And most people know that if you go into a nursing home and you have to stay in a nursing home, then your income can very easily end up going to the nursing home. Best case scenario, either you're paying out of pocket totally for nursing home expenses, which can be anywhere between $55 to $8,500 a month, which will very quickly use up $150 in assets that this client has. Or we can look at asset protection and doing a Medicaid application through an attorney's office. Mr. Haley, being an advanced practitioner in this state, or in the nation actually, he is the only certified elder law person who handles asset protection in Southside Virginia. So if you are anywhere from Hillsville, Virginia, all the way out to Halifax, all the way up to, I don't know, all over the place, there's like 10 counties that we cover, something like that. So we have a huge range of people that we work with to help deal with their assets and to prepare them financially and legally. And that's really one of the very first steps, is what are we going to do? Because in this case, most people are very concerned about whether he's going to be able to afford to live at home. How is he going to make payments to cover the nursing home? How quickly his assets are going to be gone? What about his health? What if, he lives in a rural area and there's nowhere to no nursing home nearby? And what if she is able to come home? What if he needs help in the home? And most people want to stay home if at all possible. So that's like one of the main goals of life care planning, is to try to keep people in the home as long as possible, using whatever means is available, whether that's public or private. So in this case study, the specific things that we are going to address, so I'm sorry, I skipped one. So he comes into our office. Mr. Smith would come into the office and ask for advice. He's concerned about everything. We did that. So go to the next one. So our case study goals here are, we need to address first and foremost her care. Is she going to be in a nursing home? Is she going to be coming home? If she can come home, what equipment and staff is she going to need? What is his health, so that he can take care of her or not take care of her? Who are the family members, if any, that are available? Are there other people who are available? So we need to look at her care, his care, and his health status. What's he capable of? And then what is our quality of life for her? Where does she want to be? What's the best case scenario for her? Is it safe for her to come home? That sort of thing. Is it best for her to be in a nursing home? And then we're going to look at financially, how is all this going to be handled? What are their assets currently, and how is everything going to be handled? Whether it's, do we need to apply for Medicaid, or are we going to have to pay privately? Do we want to come home? Do we have people who can staff that are not going to have to be paid if there's family members? What's our best case? And then we have to address the house. Usually that's most people's main asset in this area. Not always. We do have some interesting cases. But the average person, their home is their biggest investment. They may have additional properties. They may have rental properties. They may have beach houses. They may have cabins. They may have IRAs, stocks, insurance policies, all kinds of things that can prevent them from having, they have too many assets to qualify if you just look at doing an application by yourself. So in a married couple, our rule of thumb, to give the law firm a little spin, we have a real simple rule of thumb. Number one, if you're a married couple and one spouse needs to go on Medicaid, and I don't care if you have $1 million, almost always we can save almost 100% of your assets and still get one spouse on Medicaid. In a single person, we can usually save 40% to half of their assets and still get that person on Medicaid in a nursing home. There are stipulations, there are a lot of qualifications, it's a whole lot of work, it's not an easy process, but it can be done and we do it every day. And so that's our specialization. So, that's how are we gonna keep from impoverishing the couple or the single person, dealing with the house, dealing with the heirs who are involved, and trying to protect what this couple has created and saved their whole life to be able to leave their inheritance to their children, if at all possible. That's what people expect to be able to do. And then also we are going to address and plan for the actual end of life for her along the way. A lot of people are not necessarily open to this, but we do try to have that conversation to help people start to get, pre-planned funerals, maybe plan a vigil, during their death vigil. What exactly do they want? We can talk about that later. And then the actual death, and then how that person's estate is going to be handled after their death. So that's also estate law. So the next graphic here is the elder care continuum, and I hope you guys are posting questions that we can answer for you. I know I'm kind of flying through this a little fast, and we'll talk more in the end of this conversation. We can have more of a back and forth questionnaire sort of thing, questions and answers with all of us. So do either write down your answers or pop them into the little chat window there so that we can address them later. This graphic is called the Elder Care Continuum. This graphic is basically to help you figure out where you are in your life. And so, it starts out at the very top. Each line is basically a full aspect of your life. So physically is the top line, being completely mobile and completely capable, completely healthy, all the way to death itself. And then the second is what kind of living situation is available for you, whether that's living at home independently, do you need just a little bit of care so that you might be in a assisted living facility or a community that's apartments, be a caregiver at home, that sort of thing, retirement community. All those things, those are basically considered independent living, the first three. And then assisted living is actually more like the manor or some of the other facilities around here where it's more of a facility, but it's still not Medicaid. Assisted living is private pay, and the only as far as I know, the only program that will help pay for assisted living is a veterans program, and you have to qualify for that. But as far as I know, that's the only possible way to get assistance paying for assisted living. It is private pay. And then the nursing home itself, which Medicaid is available for that. And otherwise it's private pay, and it, like I said, can range anywhere from full-time skilled care. I'm not talking about rehab here. Full-time skilled care is anywhere from $5,500 up to $8,500, depending on the county that you're in. Higher counties, if you're up north, it could be even higher than 85. 85 is kind of top limit down here in the South. And then the third line obviously is just giving you the reference of the cost of care. Living at home independently, you're not spending any extra money on care or assistance. To the other end of the spectrum is the full-time nursing home skilled care. So all along the way, it gets more and more and more expensive. And then at the end, we have public benefits and any other available resources that life care planners will pull from, whether that's private funds, VA benefits, Social Security, community services. There's the Center for Aging, the Southern Area on Aging here in this area. There's hospice services, there's Medicaid, Medicare, there's Social Security has some benefits, the VA has some benefits, all kinds of Meals on Wheels. We're going to pull whatever resources we can get to hopefully help find what services you need at what level of care you need. So the next graphic is basically the same thing. It's kind of like a form that we have in our head where we are trying to get things kind of lined up all along the way, so that your functional limitations, as your function goes down, your level of care goes up, as the cost goes up, and as you get closer and closer to Medicaid needed or full-time private pay care. So everything is moving actually over to the right there as we move into the continuum, as you get closer and closer to death. So why would you use life care planning? So life care planning is a way to help ease the stress that is involved in growing older. It allows people to maintain independence and to keep their choices and their wishes to be followed. There are a great deal of people who we have worked for who they either don't trust their children or they just don't want to relinquish their independence to their children. They've taken care of their children their whole lives. And in this life, we are finding more and more people don't have children and they are alone. So if you don't have children in your life to take care of you when you get old, then you're going to have to hire somebody. If you plan to, if you have some disabilities and some things like that, and you are wanting to stay at home, the more you stay at home, the more you're going to need to have a tribe to support you. And so life care planning and care management has become the industry that supports the elder, specifically for those that don't have families who have the ability to leave work, to stay home, and to maintain their elders. 100 years ago when mom and dad got ill, you would move them into your house. People don't want to do that anymore. They have jobs, they have kids, they have, we're not a society that just automatically has generations of people living together. That's not the Western American. We are very independent, and as social distancing has proven, in certain cases, it's not even healthy necessarily for people to have multi-generational households, because the kids are going to be, exposed to everything in the world at daycare and school, and you may have an elder living in your home who has major respiratory illnesses. So you might need to separate those people, but there again, best case scenario, most clients want to maintain their independence and have their wishes followed no matter what. And when you start involving children into your life, then the children can take over your finances. They're going to use your money however they want to use your money. If you have a power of attorney, you've named that power of attorney. So if they choose that, you know, it's the best case for you to buy their child a car, and you don't have the cojones to tell them no, then they might go use your money to go buy their child a car. And if that's the case, that can really have long, far-reaching repercussions in regard to Medicaid and that sort of thing. So you may have a lot of questions about that. But that's part of why you use an elder care coordinator or life care planner, because, for instance, we have some clients, I'm going to start throwing some stories in here about certain clients. We have one couple who is basically, they are totally independent. They live out in a well-to-do area, and basically they use us as retained consultation service. We're on a retainer with them, where they just call and ask whatever it is that they have going on in their life and what's the best case to handle it. Whether it is that they have some antiques and they sell the antiques, what's the antique market like? I have some books, Cricket. How do I know whether they're valuable books or not? What's the best place to dispose of them? Maybe they're looking at downsizing and that's why they're looking at selling their stuff. Maybe they need to have care in the home. She specifically had back surgery, and I talked to her about, you know, you can actually have a caterer come in and make meals for you, and you can freeze them and put them in the freezer and be able to pop them out whenever you're ready. That way you don't have to stand on your feet all day and cook, but you have fresh, homemade, healthy, nutritional food, as opposed to having to buy Schwann's, which is very expensive, or not being able to get to the grocery store. You know, you can actually find services that maybe you've not thought of, whether it's using Instacart or using delivery services for your groceries, for your medicine. There's also caterers and people out there who will create food for you either in your home or bring it to your home prepackaged for you to use and pull out on a regular basis. And that can sometimes, very often, be equivalent to what you would spend at the grocery store, but it's going to be much more healthy, obviously, and much more convenient. So with life care planning, we're actually trying to set goals as to what you're wanting to accomplish so that you can stay in your home or deal with whatever you have on your plate. We're going to go over your health information and your financial information. So we are going to have an exhaustive questionnaire that we fill out at the very beginning of intake to start with a client. And that is basically where we are making a baseline so that we can begin to track you. So we're going to have the registered nurse come out and Joanna, and they will fill out this huge questionnaire with all your medical, all your health, your home information, and your financial information, so that then we can come back to the office and write a report out that says this is where you are on the continuum. This is the next step in the continuum of where you're going to be. And these are our recommendations at this point. And this is what's going to be coming up later that needs to be dealt with, whether it's, do you have documents? Do you need to have a prepaid funeral? Do you have too many cars that we need to liquidate or that we suggest you liquidate? Do you have adult children in the home who are incapacitated that their care needs to be addressed? There's all kinds of things that, you know, it can go across the spectrum just to everything. And we've handled almost every situation. So easily enough, some people just like to call and ask us those questions. And we just have a phone conversation, and all of a sudden they know exactly what they need to do, and they have good resources, whether it's vendors or programs that they can rely on that we have vetted to be able to help them with their issues. On the next slide, it basically gives you kind of like a flow chart of what we do. So you're going to meet with the attorney first and the life care planner. Sometimes you meet with me first. Sometimes you meet with Mr. Haley first. Sometimes it just kind of depends. Mr. Haley being a law firm, he very often will refer people to us as life care planners. Or we as life care planners will see that there are holes legally in someone's life that need to be addressed. And so we will refer you to the attorney to get those things done. So the first thing that has to be done is the assessment of your health, and then the assessment of your finances. Of course, the next step is to make sure that your estate planning, your documents like your will, your power of attorney, your healthcare power of attorney, and your living will have all been done. If you are close to death, maybe we need to have a post form done, which Joanna and Stephanie are both certified post coordinators, so that they can fill out that form, which is actually a certified doctor's, I can't think of the word.
It's basically it becomes a physician's order once you fill it out, and the doctor signs it. So it's less likely that someone will ignore those orders.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Remember,
No problem.
and that's Joanna if y'all haven't seen Joanna before. And hopefully she'll pop up. I don't know if y'all can see her or not, but she will. So after that, after we do the estate planning, we then, by that point, we've already made the action plan and we've made our recommendations. We've done your report. And so we now have the life care plan. And those things are what we start doing. So we, do you need us right now? Do you need anything other than a referral? Do you need care in the home? What might it be? And we'll go into all of that. So even if you don't need us, we're always going to do like currently we might just check up on you every 3 months, every 6 months. It's kind of up to you, just to see where you are and what needs to be done and has anything changed, and update our information. As it goes on around, it gets more and more in depth with care, if finances, at what point do we need to apply for Medicaid so that there can be help in the home perhaps, or maybe, it just depends on what the situation is as to where along the continuum we might apply for Medicaid, if ever, or, maybe that was the very beginning. Very often people don't call us until they are already in a crisis and we are having to apply for Medicaid immediately. And then it goes on around where we're doing like, the annual assessments, we track everything. And then you might apply for Medicaid, we get approved, we have you placed in the nursing home or in whatever facility, and then it just keeps going on around until you actually have passed. Now, hopefully somewhere in there we have actually addressed your plans for your death and with family and all of those things. So what are the specific people involved? Who is the tribe that's going to be necessary for doing life care planning? Of course, we start out with the attorney. Very often our referrals are from the attorney. A certified elder care coordinator is also necessary because this person, I'm one, and Stephanie has taken that training. Basically, that training is to help you become aware of all of the aspects that seniors are facing and what all the resources are that are out there. So you become very trained in making sure that you're aware of body movements, eye issues, hearing issues, walking issues, all the different chronic illnesses and things that we need to be looking for that very often family members don't see because they are working with somebody every day, dealing with dementia, dealing with autism, just all kinds of things that a lot of family members don't see, and they either they are choosing not to see it subconsciously, or they are just so deep in the well with just doing care that they have not noticed it. And then, of course, learning how to pull all of those resources together is what a certified elder care coordinator does. We also have a CNA or an RN or a licensed practical nurse on staff. Those are medical, obviously, who deal specifically with medical questions. There's always medical issues to be going on, and so we need to have a professional who is trained to be able to answer those specific questions. And then the death doula, which helps with, you know, the whole aspects of, you know, maybe we need to do hospice care, emotional support, the death vigil planning, and then actual funeral planning, and then all of that kind of stuff. So let's go into a little bit. Y'all know what attorneys do. I'm not going to go over what the attorney does because you know that that's specifically about the law. Those are going to be the questions about the finances, about asset protection, about your estate planning documents, about estate administration, you know, what's the best, all of those things. We won't go into that because those are other seminars. So what is a certified elder care coordinator? And that specific one is, like I was saying, we were talking about that. That is the majority of what we do. Is it's also another word for this is care management. Care management involves everything from maintenance of the home to care in the home to care in the nursing home. You know, is there issues? Very often it has a lot to do with preventing elder abuse, whether that's physical, financial, or emotional. There's a lot that goes on that just having a certified, reputable person in the mix can prevent so much that happens. And elder abuse is actually one of the highest abuse situations in the nation, and it is probably also one of the least made aware of. And almost all, I don't want to say all, but a high percentage of elder abuse is from the family. And, you know, while very often we see very intentional things happen where family is taking advantage of an elder financially or housing wise or whatever it might be, there's also the whole situation of caregivers who might be paid caregivers or neighbors or you just don't know who it might be, boyfriends, girlfriends, fiancés, all kinds of things that we have seen that there is questionable practices happening to the elder, and the elder is incapable or unable to protect themselves in that situation. We specifically were called in one case. We had a client who lived out in the woods. She had about $1 million. She was single by that point, and we had she only had a single child. The child lived across the nation. I mean, on the other side of the United States. And so she was not capable of being here all the time, didn't have the greatest relationship. But the caregiver was hired by a very reputable company. But she, you know, she worked her butt off. She was a great person and she really worked hard. And that relationship over the years developed into being so intimate that it truly threatened the financial stability of the client. And so the daughter called us in and made us aware, and that gave that client the ability to be able to now be able to say, my attorney won't let me, or Cricket says that's not appropriate, or they're handling my bills right now, I can't give you that extra money, you know, that sort of thing. But there was a constant flow going to that caregiver. And had we not become involved, she probably would have inherited everything that this woman owned, and the child would have been totally left out in the cold, which, you know, that might have been great. It might have not been great, but in reality, the parent themselves made the choice of what she wanted to leave to the caregiver and what she wanted to leave to the child. But had she felt abandoned and manipulated, very often I see clients who are very frightened of hurting the feelings or not giving everything that they can give to the caregiver because they are afraid of losing that caregiver, and they're afraid of repercussions. I've had people in nursing homes who are afraid to speak out, even though they have been abused physically by being hit in the head with things, or, you know, I see scratches and stuff and bruises come up on my clients, and they don't want to tell me which caregiver did it, but it happens. And even if I don't know and they won't tell me who it is, it can still be addressed with the caregivers either in general, but most of the time just making people aware that we are tracking and that we are seeing these things straightens it out very quickly. And, you know, in this case where this client was very happy giving extra money to this caregiver, I had a very frank conversation with her, and I said, this is not ethically what you should be doing, because you're putting her job at risk, because her accepting money on the side from you is ethically inappropriate for her position. And so we made the caregiver aware, we made the company who the caregiver worked for aware, and we had the conversation with the client herself. The client decided what she wanted to do was what she wanted to do, and so everybody was at least on the same page. But I know for a fact that it diminished the amount of money that she was receiving, which in this case, that's best case scenario. You know, but she still got enough of a stipend that she felt that this girl, who was now her adopted daughter, was still receiving enough that she felt that she wasn't going to abandon her at any point. And that is, you know, you have to come up with what's appropriate in every case. You can't just say black or white, this is not the way it's going to work. You have to work it out. So we have to be very creative often to settle disputes or deal with issues that pop up. Like I said, a lot of the things that a care manager is going to do is care in the home. It might be personnel management, might be dealing with the vendors, might be dealing with contractors. Does something need to be painted? Do we need to call the plumber? Do we need to get the roof fixed? You know, what is it? Do we need to hire somebody to mow the yard? All of those things, though, when they go through a care management service or the life care planning of a law office, the vendors and everybody knows that this person is being watched over by an attorney. And you're not going to end up having the guy who is mowing your yard coming to ask you if he can have your tractor, or stealing, you know, a car, or asking to come in the house and check out what you got in the house, or having all your power tools stolen out of your garage. I mean, we've had all kinds of situations. So if we hire someone, we know this person is vetted. They very often will even call us and say, you know, I mowed her yard today and she was walking around taking care of the flowers. Or she wandered out to the street and looked in the mailbox and then kind of wandered like she was lost, and I had to take her back in the house. You know, these people will call us and let us know what's going on, even if it's the plumber. They know us and they know why they're there and why they have been hired, and this person is being watched over by the law office. So it could be that we arrange financial management services for them to pay their bills. It could be we arrange transportation, or we take them to the doctor. We have one client who he and his wife just want Joanna to go with them every time they go to the doctor. She goes and picks them up, drives them to their doctors in North Carolina, and drives them home. She makes a record of everything that's been done. And so while they both don't have any children, it gets overwhelming at a certain point for elders to be able to remember everything that they're taking and everything the doctor said and everything they need to be doing, and having a surrogate daughter who they can call Joanna at any point and say, what did the doctor tell me about so-and-so, and help me remember. And she's going to be able to put that into the words, or write it down for them, or give them a call every day to help them remember to take their medicine, or whatever it might be. We certainly have done that too. Like I said, we track, we can arrange transportation, we do even groceries, food, like I said, catering, Instacart, plumbers, everything. Take care of the pet. We have one client as care coordinators that she lives in her home, and she is her son lives in Florida, and she lives all alone. She used to have a dog. We have maintained her in the home now for about 3 years. So she has one main caregiver. We don't have to do a whole lot right now. We go to the doctor with her. When she goes to the doctor, we used to maintain the dog. The caregiver helps with everything. We manage the house if she has any issues, like she needs to have bars installed, or she has a leak, or the washing machine doesn't work. The caregiver calls us and we manage it. We pay all of her bills. We took care of the dog, whether it was going to the groomer or the vet, or when she got deathly ill and I had to put her down. You know, we brought her in even for that, so that she could be with her dog during those last few minutes, but then she didn't have to stay the whole time, which, you know, that whole process can be overwhelming and take hours to be in the vet. And she's very ill herself. And she's one that has COPD, so she's one that we're very, very concerned about her being out in the community at this time. So we've been able to maintain her, keep her healthy. She's, you know, I don't know how long this is going to last, but it'll just go on and on and on. But she's got all of her documents in place. We use CareZone as an app on our phone to facilitate the communication between the family in Florida, the caregiver here in Bassett, and the life care planning people on our team. So all three of us get notifications through CareZone, and so does the son. So anytime the caregiver does an update, usually twice a day, on her care and what her mood was and what they did today, and you know, does she need any extra things? Is something totally out? Is she running out of something? Is she feeling bad? Does she have a temperature? What's her heart rate? Did she seem to be sleeping more than usual? All that is seen every single day in real time by all of us. Whether I post, whether the son posts, or whether the caregiver is posting, we're all seeing the same stuff. CareZone is a HIPAA certified app that is free, and you can have multiple people on it. So I can have my husband on it, my parents on it, my sister on it, and then all my clients on it, and everybody is kept individually, and it's got everything from a calendar to what medications to a journal to you know, reminders and stats and trackers and everything. So I totally recommend that. We use it all the time. So to talk a little bit more about the other aspects of those people on the staff, like Joanna and Stephanie. Stephanie is a registered nurse. And she's also a certified elder law coordinator. She took the same certification as I did. She actually got hers before I got mine. Joanna is a licensed practical nurse and a CNA. And while we don't actually offer home care services specifically, like we're not a in-home care with a whole bunch of aides that can come in your home, we have these services such as Joanna and Stephanie specifically, so that if somebody doesn't show up for their shift, or there's an injury, or there is a moment of somebody's having trouble breathing, or their heart rate goes up, or whatever, we can call in our registered nurse, our nurses, and our CNAs, whether it's, we had one client that he was 24/7 care at home. He was a veteran, and so his veteran services paid for all of his medical expenses and medicine, and he had to pay out of pocket for home care at home. And every once in a while, somebody wouldn't show up for a shift, and Joanna was available to be able to pull those shifts at a moment's notice whenever something happened. And we also, because we have, in certain cases, we manage a client's finances. We are so close, track these things so closely, that in 2 cases, we had identity theft. Well, not really identity theft. We had a hack happen, sort of, where one was a SunTrust account, and the other one was a Fidelity account. And somehow, which, these people were not being using their like debit cards or anything, because they're at home sick. So somehow these accounts were hacked, and we were on it so quickly that we were able to freeze the accounts, notify the bank, and move the money appropriately to be able to prevent any great loss. But we also had such great information that we were able to show all of this. The first thing that came out that was like a $2,000 debit, we knew that was a problem, so it set off all of our triggers, which immediately allowed us to be able to prevent it from happening any further. And so, it's amazing. At times, I've been surprised at how well what we have designed actually works. To go on to the next thing, obviously, when you have medical issues with anything, having the ability to call Stephanie or Joanna in the middle of situations. I personally have used these services for my own parents who are in the 80s. And when Daddy had a motorcycle accident about 10 years ago, I was on the phone with Stephanie a million times, because I was in the hospital with Daddy, and I'm looking at, all the machines, and I don't understand what they're doing. And I'm asking her what it's doing, and what does this reading mean, and why is this so low? And she was able to help me over the phone to ascertain that they were giving him so much medicine that they were suppressing his breathing, and they were just overdosing him. And so his breathing was dropping really, really low and kind of bottoming out. And then it would come up very, very slowly. And Daddy had never been on any medication. He didn't take anything except for maybe an acid once in a while. So, to put him on these major drugs, because he had broken like half the bones in his body, all of his ribs, he was on major medication, but they were still overdosing him to the point that they were suppressing his breathing. So she was able to help my mother to be able to give the right information, to be able to modify his care in real time. That's my certification for the thing. And then we were talking about the CNA and the RN and what they actually are the services that they offer are more medical and more higher level than like a management service. So it's actual care or actual emergencies, being able to, you know, go out, have Joanna go out, and maybe all she needs to do this week is to put the medicine in the box for a client to make sure that they have the medication in their little distribution boxes appropriately, and that she has checked to make sure that they're all being done and all that kind of stuff. There are certain things that a home aide is not allowed to do. And unless there is a family member who is allowed to do it, then you have to have a licensed practical nurse or a registered nurse handle the medication. So that's one of the very helpful things. But also there's very often a situation that can arise where clients are seeing multiple doctors, and the clients don't know that there is a lot of interaction between these medicines and that they can cause side effects between each other. So having an assessment done to make sure that you're not taking medications that are affecting each other inappropriately is very advantageous. And so, you know, that's why you need to have professional services like that at a moment's notice at a phone call. The last thing we want to talk about is the use of a death doula. This is to help address, this is part of the death positive movement in America. Go to the next. Then the death doula does the actual planning of the days that you're going to be dying, the funeral pre-planning. You know, if you haven't pre-planned for your funeral, buying a funeral now is going to be cheaper than if you wait until you're actually ready to die. If I go buy my funeral today, it's probably going to be $7,000 to $8,000 to $10,000, depending on if you're having a burial or whether you're having a cremation. But it's only going to go up. So if I wait until 10 years or 20 years from now to buy my funeral, it's going to be probably $10,000 more dollars. Who knows? Excuse me. But making those plans ahead of time also helps remove the children or anyone else from the decisions that you want to make. And so as a death doula and as a care coordinator, it is our place to remove ourselves and our opinions and our religious beliefs and our spiritual beliefs out of the situation, and for us to adapt into whatever it is that is your belief system and your wishes. So if you wish to be buried in a cemetery, then that is our goal too. And we're going to help provide you with the information you need to have what it is that you want. If you wish to have a cremation, or maybe you choose to not be embalmed and you want to have a natural burial in a different environment than a cemetery, one that where they bury you without the vault and the casket. We can help find whatever it is that you need, and to support you in what your decisions are. We are not going to in any way judge or you know, discuss or argue the point of religious beliefs, whatever it might be, whether, you know, we have a large range of people in our society, even here in Bassett. You know, whether you're Asian or whether you are Hindu, an Indian, or Mexican, or whatever, you know, your nationality is and what your cultural beliefs are. A death doula is to understand and to study the belief systems and your cultural aspects, and to be able to help you plan your death to fit that belief system. And to deal basically with whatever planning is involved, whether that is just the conversation of what is death and dying going to be like, to whether we need to help you plan your funeral, plan the actual death vigil, which a lot of people don't do these days. Maybe we help you plan a legacy project, which is something we can put together, or have the family put together, really to help give you some sort of a way to be remembered past your death. You know, whether it's everybody is putting together, mom's well known for her recipes, and so everybody's writing out their favorite recipes that they remember mom providing for everybody at all of our wonderful family gatherings, and creating a book about that. That's the kind of thing that's like a legacy project. And then obviously the final vigil is actually when you are actively dying. And, you know, I've been called to bedsides before, specifically for this situation. One of my last clients, they were in the hospital and they were dying. And most people seem to really, at this point in our culture of Western America, we seem to believe that death is a medical event and that we should be able to prevent it somehow. And so we have a good bit of preconceived notions that people should fight to stay alive, no matter how ill they are. And that you know, we have a tendency to say, well, she gave up. And so she finally died when she gave up. Well, you know, those terms and that sort of way of looking at things is not necessarily the most death positive aspect of something that we are all going to face, whether we're ready for it or not. You're not getting out of this world alive, obviously. You're going to have to face your own death at some point. And to be aware of that, and to help provide the conversation of that, and to help provide the more of a spiritual event, a more family oriented event when you're having a death vigil, when everybody's in the room. That's basically what a death doula is to do. So like the last one I was called to for this client, the family was all in the room at the hospital, and there was probably, I don't know, 10 people there or so, and there was nothing being said, which was, you know, at least it was quiet and peaceful. There was an awful lot of gunk in his mouth, and that needed to be cleaned out. People were afraid to touch him. You know, I cleaned his mouth out. I softened his lips. I touched him and massaged his hand and his shoulder, and you know, spoke to the people there, and then had time to be able to discuss, you know, moments and memories that were important in his life. And so the conversation went to, you know, more of an awareness, a blessing of what having him as part of our life experience was, and all of the wonderful memories of what he had accomplished, and to have each person be able to say their goodbyes in person with him, whether he was logically, you know, coherent or not, doesn't really matter. They are hearing you on some level. And so to be able to give permission and thanks and gratitude to that person for their life is part of what a death vigil is to do. And then obviously after death or life celebration support is something that we also do to help people deal with the days after that person has transitioned. There are things that can be done to help a client deal with their own pain, and to honor and provide acknowledgement for that life. and, you know, having a little thing that you do, maybe a little ceremony that is done every day for, you know, the next year or the next week, or at least 9 days or so, to help you deal with what has been going on with journaling, or, you know, lighting a candle or whatever it might be. There are all kinds of options, but to be able to have something to help support yourself and your family and that person who is still, you know, part of our lives, whether they are physically on this plane or not. So one of our other clients I will tell you about, this client hired us when he was in the nursing home. His son lived in DC and was very, you know, just loving child, but obviously he lived in DC, and so he couldn't be here. And so the man, he lived here in Bassett and was at the nursing home, and they hired us to take, he wanted to go home, and he was near death, and so he wanted to go home. He didn't want to die in a nursing home. He wanted to go home. And so we made the plans. We got 24/7 care for him. The son was going to pay for it. Hospice, of course, was involved because he was so near death anyway. We put the hospital bed in the house. We moved everything out of that room so that he was in his bedroom, in a hospital bed. We had care for him in the home. He came home. He had a big bowl of soup that day. Slept in his bed in his own house that night. And the next morning, the aide came to check on him and said she was going to go make his breakfast. And when she came back, he had passed. And I can't say that was a perfect death. That was a well-lived death. He got what he wanted. He was happy, and he was home. And that was what he wanted. And so that was perfect. The family was happy with that. He was happy with that. And we were happy with that. That was certainly not the plan. We didn't expect him to pass away overnight. But, you know, he was ready. He had no unfinished business, and so he was done. That, too, is part of what we do, to try to help each client be able to have what their wishes are, no matter what the situation might be. So again, a death doula makes themselves available to assist the dying individual and the family before, during, and after the death occurs. We help provide support physically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. Death is not a medical event. Our personal, spiritual, and philosophical beliefs are not important. We adapt to whatever the family or whatever the person's situation is to help support them in that spiritual path. And then we are also part of the death positive movement, to try to help people be able to broach their own death before it ever comes, so that they don't have a difficult death. And a difficult death can be caused by many things, but, you know, trying to prepare for it up front is obviously, you know, the less stress that you can put in a situation, the better. Sometimes the death doula is very associated with home deaths or home funerals, because that is just part of the movement. We're trying to help people experience death in a way that is supportive and positive for the entire family, for the living and the dying. I say a lot. And then, of course, we do try to make people aware of what the natural events are that are taking place, so that they feel more secure and more aware of what is happening. Very often people feel very out of control and very helpless during these situations. So a death doula and hospice work very closely together to help support the family. We are not obviously medical people, and we are also not the funeral director, okay? But we work with all of those people to help you get what it is that you need. So obviously the reason why you would use the death doula is to allow people to transition and die in a manner that they choose, and to create closing and peace of mind for not only the dying person, but for their loved ones who are surrounding them, and to make them more involved actively in the death, as opposed to just standing around witnessing, but to help be part of that person's experience. I personally had the experience recently of my father passing away, and I was able to act as a death doula for him and for my family, in conjunction with hospice, who's very supportive. And, you know, to have my nieces and nephews be able to hold my father's hand as he passed has changed them forever. And to be able to see the young people in society be able to gain a different awareness of what death is and not to be afraid of it is a blessing. And so that's part of what we do. There's also a movement called Death Cafe. You can find it on a website called deathcafe.com, and that is something that we are going to be offering. It's just a conversation online, kind of like this is, where we are just providing a space for people to talk about death, whether it's their death or the aspects of death, or, you know, their fears of death, or what they need to do legally, financially, or funeral wise. Who benefits from care for life care planning? Obviously, the client themselves benefit, the caregiver, the seniors, they benefit. Obviously, that's the client, because we are able to reduce the amount of stress in their life, and they know that they're going to be well taken care of on every level. And then the families, of course, the caregivers themselves, very often are family, or spouses. They are very often at risk health-wise if the stress gets too high or the amount of work gets too high. You know, taking care of, being a full-time caregiver, you might be working 24 hours a week, or 24 hours a day, because very often a person with dementia might not sleep. So we have to make sure that our caregivers are going to benefit. And then, of course, families benefit as well. Just having the peace of mind of knowing that you have professional expert advice, and that a person is available just by phone or by text at any point. And that pretty much covers everything that we do. And if you would like to open the floor for questions, the other law services that we offer are listed there through the law office. And if you are interested in any of those services, please call to set up a consultation.
Well, thank you so much, Ian and Robert. So like I said, we will take questions. Since we only have the 3 guests started on right now, I'll just unmute them one by one so they can have a turn to ask a question, okay? All right, we're going to start with Michael Hawkins. Hi, Michael. Do you have any questions for the panelist?
I think he's muted.
Yeah, no, thanks. We don't have, sorry.
No problem. Thank you so much. All right, Helen, do you have any questions for us?
I will say that if you are not in our service area, and you're like up north or in other areas, because I know this is a Zoom, and while most of us who have family, if you don't have family here, you might have family in other areas that are outside of our service area. You can always look for life care planning. There's a life care planning association. There's life planning attorneys, and then there's also care management services that are popping up everywhere that are specifically doing this kind of thing, while we specifically are the only ones that have like the death doula aspect in this whole ball of wax. I think that will become more and more, but you can also find death doula services through inelda.org, and that they are a international end of life doula training program, which is where I was trained, and they have a place on their website for finding doulas in your area. And also, you can always look up care managers. There are several care management services in other areas. So if you are not in an area that we serve, then we can make a referral to areas outside, to other people who we are familiar with that we feel comfortable. We'll take care of you. Okay?
Awesome. And we have one more panelist. Do you have any questions for our panelist?
No, not at this time.
All right, thank you so much. All right, well, again, thank you all for joining us today. I want to thank each of our panelists for doing this for us. It was a great talk. Again, I learned so much from you guys, and I feel like I need to come visit you guys soon to get my own stuff in order. So be on the lookout for my email because, again, every time it's been a pleasure to work with you guys for each event that we've done. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And again, this presentation has been recorded, and once it's uploaded, it takes about a week and a half now for Zoom to get that to me. So once I get that, I will send that to you guys at Elder Law, and we will post it on our YouTube page as well.
Hey, Brian, it looks like we might have had one posted question.
Oh, we had a comment that said, "Thank you very much," from Michael Hawkins. So again, thank you guys all for that. And Michael said, very comprehensive.
Thank you.
And if at any time anybody does have any questions come up, just give us a call. Even if you're not sure if you can use our help, we can definitely guide you through it and help you figure out what we need to do for you.
All right.
Thank you, Joanna.
No
All right. Well, thank you all again, and I'm going to stop the recording.